Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah,
I'm Laura.
and we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now, we are breaking into the earth as we cover
Breaking the earth.
the Broken Earth trilogy by N.K. Jemisin. But before we discuss chapters 9 through the second interlude, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
Okay, so I mentioned previously that I was making my way through Vinland Saga by Makoto Yukimura, and I talked about the first four books and how they were like so deep and so full of like all of these rich themes, and it really surprised me. But the books 5 through 8 of this series are they really made me emotional. They were
Oh,
so difficult to get through at times. And I'm just like really impressed by the author's ability to like work in these really hard themes. And also, it seems like it's a fairly like realistic historically, it's a historical fiction, but it's historically accurate. Like the author put some time into like doing some research and figuring out like what kind of things would be happening, et cetera,
right.
in the world at that time. And I, in this second four sections of books, like this second arc, we follow Thorfinn, who basically, after the end of the fourth book, has lost his will to live because his entire spoilers abound for Vinland Saga. It's been out a while and people have been watching the anime, so you know what? I'm sorry, not sorry for all the spoilers, but if you are worried about spoilers, skip 5 minutes. And so we pick up right after Thorfinn has lost his will to live because his entire being was all wrapped into avenging his father's death.
Mm-hmm.
And Askeladd, the man who killed his father, ends up being killed for political reasons, basically to help a king kind of work his way up in status. And this leaves Thorfinn pretty much broken because he
Mm-hmm.
is a child who has dedicated his whole life to thinking that he was going to be the one that killed the man who murdered his father. And so when Askeladd is gone, he is pretty much just broken and he ends up being sold into slavery.
Wow.
Yes. And as a slave, he has this for me it's really easy to recognize because like I deal with depression, but he's very much going through this state of like not caring and a lack
Right.
of caring about himself and the world around him in this section. And you see him start to develop a develop empathy and sympathy for his own situation and for others throughout this section. He develops relationships with other slaves who are motivated to get out of slavery, and they do inspire Thorfinn to care again. And it's a really well thought out section, and I think that it does a great job of showing the different situations that bring people into their current situation, how all of them end up in their slavery or servitude of some sort, and
Yeah.
how a lot of times the privileges that people have are just built on chance. And
Right.
it's it's really crushing at times. And there were moments when I was talking with my friend who recommended the series to me, Jason, on Instagram, and he was, you know, we were talking back and forth, and I thought it was interesting how we both were taking away different things from it, but he was able to point out things to me that I didn't necessarily think about, and a lot of them were related to like how the characters ended up in the situations that they did and how their motivations were very much tied to the reasons that they got there, and how certain situations like that I didn't expect in terms of like the background of certain characters. I was asking him about it like, oh, can you explain what happened here, because I thought that something else was the situation. He was kind of talking me through like, oh well, actually, you know, this was all a lie, and this person built their entire life and all of these privileges and all of their success off of a lie. And it's so I don't want to say eye-opening, but it's very much like a situation where you're reading this and recognizing like, oh yeah, there's not always people who just end up being born into privilege. Sometimes people lie
Right.
to get their way to the top, and it's just a really well
I
done series.
I love this type of character study because I was just talking about this in my writing group where someone was talking about like I really just don't like when characters cheat. I don't like it at all. And I was like, I actually think it's
But it
interesting
happens
because I like,
constantly in
yeah,
the real world.
yeah, and I'm like, I like to hear the why of it because you're never going to have a perfect character. And like they made a good point of they're writing a series and they're like, well, I don't want to sit with these characters who I don't like for like series upon series. And I was like, that's fair. Like you make the right choice for you.
Sure.
But I was like, but I like seeing these darker turns or these reasons shown on the page, like what you're talking about, where like, yeah, sometimes successful people lied to get there, and you get
Absolutely.
like you're peeling away layers, and you may not like what the characters have done, and then you have to like struggle with, do I actually like this character, or did they do
Hmm.
something where I don't like them anymore? And I think that that's like an effective storytelling motif. So I
Sure.
would be very interested to hear more about that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, and then this arc, it gets even more complicated because I think that the author does a great job bringing in these side characters and making you really attached to them.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a woman in particular that I became really attached to, and she is a slave within this situation. And I mean, obviously, this is not a great time to be a woman during this period of the world.
I don't know what
Uh,
you're talking about.
yeah, right. I meant back then, but also now. Um,
Right. Oh,
but
okay, fair.
but yeah. So during this period where the book is set, but she obviously is a slave and undergoes a lot of horrible trauma. And there's a situation where her husband, who is a slave, escapes from slavery and tries to get her to leave. And there's all these like complicated things brought up in terms of like whether or not she should go with him.
Yeah.
And I really love that the author like actually questioned that, where it was like it wasn't just an automatic like, oh yeah, I'll go with you. We're going to escape. That there was a lot of nuance to the situation in terms of like, oh well, actually she's a favorite of the master, and
Mhm.
that there's a lot of safety for her here, and she does kind of have some privileges among the slaves just based on her status among them being the master's favorite, and how she would be putting herself in so much more danger going with this person. But it also like shows the complexities of like what slavery and horrible abuse can do to you in terms of like even questioning like, should I try to escape slavery, and
Yeah.
I thought that was so well done, and it just ends in such a crushing way. But then at the end of this arc, we do see some light at the end of the tunnel where Thorfinn does actually escape slavery and is now moving forward trying to find this land or build this land that his father dreamed of. And I I really I really like this series. It's just so good and so well thought out. And again, the author is incredibly interesting to me because these just little excerpts that he's putting in are very much connected to his own like psyche and reasoning as to why he created certain things like that. And I wish more authors would have that kind of add in to their books where you
Hmm.
kind of get a little background as to why was it that they wanted to create this particular story about fathers and sons? Why are they interested in X, Y, or Z? Because I think
Right.
it offers like a lot of insight and helps you understand the story more as a reader.
Yeah.
So I really have been enjoying Vinland Saga a lot. Like this is probably going to be like an all-time favorite series. I have no doubts that it's going to be a favorite series. It was one of those, like, I think I might have mentioned last time we recorded that when I had to return the books to the library, I was like, I don't want to take them back. I want them to stay with me forever.
I own these now.
You're mine now. Also, apologies, listeners. My voice, I'm getting a cold and possibly getting sick, so my voice is not the greatest today. Just wanted to throw that out there. Um, the other things I've been enjoying, I watched the second season of Squid Game, which
Oh.
was surprisingly shorter than I thought it was going to be and
Oh.
ended on a bit of a cliffhanger. I wouldn't say that I'm like as upset as other people are about it. Like I think that it makes sense and I'm not bothered that it ended on a cliffhanger, but I was kind of expecting a little more like wrap up than there was. But I guess there was between the creator, the director, or whatever, they decided they had originally wanted to do like a long second season, but then they decided to break it up into two parts. So it's a second and a third season, which are like one overarching story. So
Right.
the second season obviously ties up in the third season. It's almost like a continuation of the second season, like one long second season.
Mm.
But um, Squid Game, I think is just, even though it's incredibly violent, I would recommend it. I think it's got a lot of interesting themes in terms of like the economy and privilege and class issues and things of that nature, and also just like understanding the psychology of people and what drives people to go to the lengths that they do. So it's really a fascinating series. I think some of the acting too is really well done. Obviously, this is a dubbed series because it's
Right.
originally a Korean show, but the acting is really great. And I I obviously have gushed about Lee Jung Jae a million times on this podcast, but he's still
No.
wonderful. He's still wonderful. I still love him so much,
I know
and
you do.
everyone should watch Squid Game. If you know what, check out the trigger warnings, and then if you're able to handle it, watch Squid Game because it is a lot.
As
But
someone, as Laura speaks to someone who almost led with, "Oh, I can never watch that show."
you know what? I totally understand. I totally understand. It's definitely not
There,
for everyone.
there are
But
very
I
few
think it's
shows that I've like seen or heard like bits and pieces where I'm like, I think I have to opt out of that because I think I would just spend the entire time emotionally crying on the floor for some reason.
you
So,
know, I think that it's one of those where I can totally understand where people are gonna be like, no, this is not for me. But I just think that it is so fascinating in terms of like the themes that it handles and the way that the characters are written that I do really like it.
do you feel like people get sensitive as they get older? I've been thinking a lot about this because I like look back at how I was when I was 20 and like the things I consumed. And now at the ripe old age of 33, I'm like, I can't handle that anymore. Like I can't handle watching that anymore. And I think back to like the
Sure.
way my mom was when I was around like not my age, but like around her like 40s and 50s where she was like, I just can't watch that. It makes me upset. And I was like, what is she talking about? And now I'm like, I
You're like,
get
oh, I
what
get
she's
it.
talking about. Like I do feel overly emotional in many ways that is not healthy and I can't always like consume the same TV as others. Like
I mean, I think for me, it's very situational.
yeah.
Like there's certain things that definitely trigger me more than others, and that's
Yeah.
within books and TV and movies. So it's not even just like TV, because I know, like I do have an easier time reading uh,
Yes.
horror elements than I
Mhm.
do watching them. But that's always kind of been a thing for me. But
Yeah.
I don't know if it's maybe just the combined experience of like having more experiences and growing that you experience
Maybe.
more things in your life. So then you do become more sensitive to other things because I can see like, you know, people being more sensitive to being a parent or something like that, that they
Yeah.
maybe would not have had that reaction when they were not a parent. So yeah, I do think, you know, just your combined experience and a lived experience can really shape the way that you react to media and knowing like what your threshold is for sure. I still
Right.
have not learned that because sometimes I like to subject myself to a horrible sob fest a la watching Up. And
Huh.
like I'm someone who deals with infertility, and that is obviously handled within the first 10 minutes of that movie.
No,
And
they don't touch on that at all. I don't know what you're talking
yeah,
about.
it's you know, it's a hot mess to watch me
Yeah,
sob
fair.
through that. But I do think there's times when I
Any
will subject myself to something like that just because I'm just like, you know what? I really want to watch something like this and I just need to feel something. So I will do it.
There's also those moments where I get really frustrated where like anytime someone talks about a dead parent, I start crying because my mom
Hmm.
died. And obviously I loved her very much. Everyone knows this, but like there will be moments where I get visibly upset that I'm crying over a book I didn't enjoy. They just happen to be talking about a dead mom.
It
And I'm
just it
like,
had a theme
I
that
was like,
connected with
dang
you.
it, I didn't want to cry because I don't actually care about this book. I'm looking at you, rom-commers. I did not care about that book, but it still made me cry because they talked about a dead mom in it. And I was like, this is frustrating because I don't even think this book is that good, but now I'm crying. And now, like, I feel emotionally attached to this book that I didn't even care about all that much. Like,
Don't you like that though when you do have like I really appreciate like movies and TV shows and books where I can like specifically think to when I read them or watched them, and I'm like, you know what, I adore that piece of trash movie because I watched it during this difficult moment of my life. And I really appreciate those type of things too.
Yeah, that's
I think
very true.
specifically like of movies that I watch when I'm like, oh yeah, I was really sick when I watched this or whatever. And
The
I'm like,
Duff
yeah,
that I watched in a fever fugue.
right. You can
Yeah.
definitely recall those type of things more than you can recall just like your basic, oh yeah, I enjoyed this type
Yeah.
show or book. So I
Yeah.
I don't know. I do think that sometimes it's good to get that kind of reaction and have more of an emotional uptick than you
Yeah.
typically have. And it's also interesting too in terms of like Squid Game to kind of have people step outside of their own perspective and realize that there is true desperation that exists within people and
Yeah.
to I think there's a lot of like social commentary in term social class commentary like income class commentary in terms of like upper class individuals not understanding the financial decisions that people who are lower class make. And
Right.
there's a particular scene in like the second season of Squid Game, and it may have happened in the first season. I'm not remembering totally because I didn't go back and rewatch the first season, but there's a scene where people who are unhoused are offered the opportunity to either have a lotto ticket or to get a piece of bread,
Yeah.
like a sweet roll thing. And they all overwhelmingly choose the lotto ticket. None of them succeed with the lotto ticket. And then the man who had offered the option of which of those things to them goes and destroys all of the food in front of these people.
Oh my
And it's a
gosh.
brutal thing to watch. And he kind of sees it as like a punishment to them for not
Ugh.
choosing this food. And I think a lot of people watching that would be like, well, why would you take the risk of taking the lotto ticket? And I think that there's very much this desperation that occurs and this glimmer of hope that people have that if they have the opportunity to improve their life in any small way, they're willing to take that risk. And
Right.
if they have to participate in this absurd series of childhood games at the risk of their life in order to improve their life, possibly, they're going to do it.
Right.
So, yeah, I just think it's a really interesting show and really maybe, obviously, it's incredibly extreme,
Hmm.
but it does kind of highlight some of the ways that people think in terms of like trying to get out of the situation that they are in.
Right.
But Hannah, that's all I'm going to talk about today. I'm
Nice.
going to save my voice a little bit and let you
You're gonna
talk.
save your voice. Oh, wow. I feel so honored. Now, for what I read, watched, and enjoyed, we're gonna have a beautiful moment because Laura loves Hannah doing two specific things, either
Ranting?
gushing over a book or ranting. And
I really love the rants.
today you get a rant because I read
Woo!
the Blue Hour by Paula Hawkins.
I've never heard of this.
Paula Hawkins is the person who wrote My Dog Just Sneezed, so if you just heard it, apologies. Paula Hawkins wrote The Girl on the Train as well as Into the Water.
Okay.
She
Don't know
kind of
those.
got very famous for The Girl on the Train. It ended up being a movie that Emily Blunt starred in as an alcoholic
Oh,
woman. It was very Gone
Emily.
Girl-esque during those years of a
Oh,
woman
when
who
we were like, we need more Gone Girl.
this
How
was
can we
very
get more
much
Gone Girl?
the flavor of we need more Gone Girl, where's our Gone Girl? And we
Where
got
is the girl? She
a
is gone.
but we got a little bit more information because the girl was not just gone, the girl was on a train and she
She
was an
was, in fact,
alcoholic.
there. She
um,
was not, in fact, gone. She was on a train and also an alcoholic. Okay.
yes, and she was an alcoholic and she wanted her husband back even though he had already remarried. And then this woman she was obsessed with goes missing and she has to figure out
Okay.
who did it. And then Into the Water was a very stupid book that Veronica and I constantly talk about because I mean, I rated it 4 stars, but we talked about how trash
Interesting.
the ending was. And this is when I read it in like 2017. So very different Hannah back then. She was younger.
Okay.
She didn't cry as much. But we always talk about how the ending is really stupid because there's a moment where you find out who did the murder and they're just like, they looked at her and then they just did a little push and then like the book ends. And we were like, that's a stupid way to end
A
a
little
book.
push of what? Like
And
they
so
push the
like they
person off?
pushed her off a cliff and you just did and so we
That's how
just
it
like
ends.
we always talk about like imagine that moment if it was on the screen of like just like whoosh. Like, it's
That's
just so
dumb.
silly. But then earlier this year, I did talk about it on the podcast. I read A Slow Fire Burning, and I didn't like it that much. And it was kind of silly, but it was easy listening. And I needed to hit my bookmarks for the end of the year. And I love listening to a trash thriller or mystery.
I
So I
love your
downloaded.
ability to like keep going back to these books where you're like, I don't enjoy them, but I keep listening. And
Well,
I'm like,
you and
you know
I
what? I can't do that.
Well, you and I have talked about this. This is my version of The Circle or Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Like, give
I cannot
me,
do Kardashians. Whew.
yes, but like give me
That's too
like the
much for me.
trashiest book on an audiobook and I will hate read it. Like it's fine. So The Blue Hour follows, oh gosh, I can't even stand this book. So it follows like this mysterious thing where a famous artist had this like expose that was running and someone's like, "Hey, you know that that's a human bone in there, right?" And the woman is dead. And so this art collector has to go out onto this island that she purchased that like is accessible via land for like 3 hours each day and
Okay.
talk to the lady who was there with who was like her like friend who lived with her for years and now owns the house but none of the artwork or whatever.
Okay.
And this woman has like not given up a bunch of the artwork she was supposed to give up. You find out through like a series of flashbacks all their different relationships. But this book is so stupid. It's
Okay.
so stupid. And it like wants to be a mystery, but Paula Hawkins can't help but be a thriller girly at the heart of it because like it's like who did it? And it's just like no, you just created a thriller in like a whodunit format and it didn't work at all.
Sure.
Because at the end of the book, I'm gonna spoil this. I don't want people to read it
Oh
unless you're
no.
hate reading it. Oh
Don't
no.
spoil it.
It's the woman who lives on the island. She's done a bunch of different murders because she was never liked, because she was always someone who is in the rafters and
You
she's
know, I
ugly
kind
and
of hate
fat.
that it's like a lonely old woman who is
It's
ugly wants to kill everyone. Like that's awful. Come on.
Yeah, and it's very much that energy of like, oh, she murdered this woman because she needed her to rely on her by like morphine overdosing her. And she killed the woman's ex-husband who like she
If only she would have
realized,
gotten married and found love and
right.
baking, then
And she
she would have
and she
not
was like
committed
a
all those murders.
doctor. Like she's not even someone who's like not high. She's like high, like qualified person who's a doctor
Because, Hannah,
who's
the
ugly and
situation is
fat.
work does not bring fulfillment to women.
God, if
We
only she had
cannot
gotten
be
a
fulfilled
cat. Yeah,
through
like
work, only
and it's
through
just
men.
and she ends up murdering the art person who like is in a weird relationship with the like this woman who he stole from another man, but they're like it's just so convoluted and so
Sure.
dumb at the end. And I was just like, I don't care about any of this. I don't care about you people. I don't care that this art collector got murdered. I expected him to be the long lost son of the artist at the end of the day, honestly, because I was like, all we are missing is one lost son reference. But like
Mhm.
this woman is like, I've killed like 3 people and now I'm on 4. And if people would just do what I wanted. And honestly, the thing is this is the second book I've read that was published. The other one was published 2023. This one is 2024. This is the second book I've read where it's like, nice little woman, watch her go insane and kill everyone. I have 2 nickels of women who do that, and that's happening too often. Why is this suddenly the
What does it
standard for
say
thrillers?
about our current state when we're like crying that men's mental
Obsessed.
health isn't addressed enough and we need to coddle men,
Right.
basically? And then women, when we're like, oh, we need to talk more about mental health, we're like, no, you're crazy.
We're all murdering each other. Like that's what actually really frustrates me with this storyline is the fact that like I feel like we've gone towards this trend of like feminism. Women can be murderers too. And it's like, yeah, but only the ugly fat ones who are obsessed with these other people.
Yeah,
Like
only the ones who like don't
only the
have
quote
kids and
unquote
have
sad
cats
ones.
and
Well, one of them
aren't
does have a
married.
kid. One of the ones she does have a kid, but like
Okay, well,
that one was a weird one where she was like in a relationship with someone who is obviously a predator, and then it turns out like, but he's nice, and actually she's the insane one who seduced him. And I'm like, they still got together when she was 15. I don't know what you're talking about. It's still inappropriate for this man to do that. So I don't get it. This woman
that's
could have
odd.
just learned to bake, like you said, and it's just very, very
That's how
strange.
we live our lives and are happy baking.
So anyway, I hated this book. I thought it was bad,
Okay.
and I don't understand why we have
I
so
love
many
when you say
different.
bad like that. Bad.
I thought it was bad. Like I just think it was
Bad.
bad. It's bad, guys.
Somebody tell me
Don't
what that
read it.
accent is. Where's that dialect from? Someone tell
It's
me.
from Hannah's head when she's upset. That was the Blue Hour Paula Hawkins rant.
Okay.
And then
Sounds
moving
like I will
on,
not be adding that one to my TBR. Thank you.
again, random books that I read to try to get to my end of the year goal of 120 books because I had to lower my amount. I listened to The Maidens by Alex
Oh
Michaelides.
yeah, how was that?
It
I
was,
liked The Silent Patient.
yeah, I liked The Silent Patient. I thought it was a little bit like easily guessed because
You know what? I thought
the
The Silent
book.
Patient was fairly easy to guess.
No, that's I was talking about The Silent Patient.
Oh,
Like when
okay,
I was
okay.
reading The Silent Patient, I was like, well, this only works if, this happened. And then at the end, I
Right.
was like, oh, well, I was right all along, and I just walked away
Mm-hmm.
from it. So The Maidens follows like this woman who, again, is a psychiatrist, and she has to go help her like niece who she's raised from like a small age after the niece's parents died because like these girls are winding up murdered on campus, and she's convinced that it's this professor who's like obsessed with the Greek myths, and he's like, why are you so obsessed with me? And he's
This guy is
American.
also like obsessed with like professor's art
He is
history and
so
yeah,
he
like
is he's a screenwriter in real life, or that was his
okay, he must
first
have watched the Da
role.
Vinci Code at a young age and been like, I can do this but better.
Symbology and
Apple.
Apple. Da Vinci Code is Apple. But like
Whoops, spoiler.
uh this book was fine. Like it's
Cryptex.
not again, it's like Silent Patient. Like I don't think it's
Sure.
bad. I gave it 3 stars. I think it's totally fine. I think
Mm-hmm.
the suspense is there. I think the like, ooh, who's this person writing a novel is effect or like writing in a journal is
Sure.
effective. And like the who done it of it all works. But I do think that like Michaelides, I'm like, what did psychiatrists ever do to you? Because he always makes these like psychiatrist characters, and then they're the worst fucking professionals I've ever met.
I'm always confused by like when authors seem to focus on a particular career like that, where it's like,
Right.
okay, one book about someone in this field, okay, but multiple about
Well, and then he has
character,
like an
I don't know.
Easter egg where we meet the person from the Silent Patient before he starts his work in
Oh,
the
good God.
Silent Patient. So
No.
there's Easter eggs, just so you know.
So they're
And
connected. They're all the books are going to be
all the
connected
books are
then.
connected, yeah, because I'm listening to the third one right now, and he brings up the main character of this book in it as like, but so this main
I
character,
didn't even know there
she's
was a third one.
she's a psychologist or psychiatrist. I can't remember which one it is. But like, here's my thing. Professional degrees have ethical obligations that we cannot go against. Like, I specifically have had to write in emails like I cannot offer legal advice in this way. I could make recommendations based on my assessment of the knowledge, but like it's not legal advice.
Sure.
That's because I'm a lawyer and I have to be careful with what recommendations and how I express myself. So that is my ethical obligation. I'm also not allowed to date clients. So all of those TV shows where you see lawyers dating their clients, they could be disbarred. So like there are just certain rules that you have to follow. I don't think Alex Michaelides knows that because in this book, this woman, like at the beginning, she is a group therapist, and one of the group members is becoming obsessed with her.
Oh no, and she dates him.
No, she does not date him, thank God.
Oh,
But at the beginning, she's like, he's sitting there and he's like, why can't I just talk to you? I just want to talk to you. And she, I thought it was very good of him because I was like, oh, that's smart. Where she's like, I can't see you in a one on one situation because I'm your
yep.
group therapist. So
Bingo.
that is
Okay.
my job. If you want to see someone one on one, I can recommend someone to you. And
Okay.
he's like, no, 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 it can only be you. And then she's like, I should probably turn him into the program that he's supposed to be on because I think he's using and I think he's becoming obsessed with me. But I'm not going to do that because I care about him. And I'm like, well, you got
Oh
one for
yay.
two, because you sure as hell like missed like no. People in that profession are probably going to report that. They're not going to just like let
Sure.
it happen and let this man start stalking her. Like it was very bizarre to be reading that and be like, I don't
Right.
believe that. Um, so I want to know what. psychiatrist and or psychologist did to Alex Michaelides to make him hate them so much. And also, the
Sure.
character is boring. She is
Mm.
milk toast, and she always talks about like, well, I'm such an effective therapist because I do this. And then she goes on to be like the most blatantly obvious questioner and someone who like is kind of bad at her job. And I'm always
I
sitting there like,
know.
why make them this profession if you're just going to like have them wax poetic about Freud, but then be actually like gobshite at their job? It's strange.
I wonder, like, screenwriters, like, what kind of lives do they lead? Like, do they do screenwriters reach out? Do you spend a lot of time doing research on like different people? Like, is there a lot of psychology study involved or like anthropology studying of involved in your job? Like, how do they come up with characters and write the shows or things that they do?
I don't
I'm
know.
very curious about that.
I do not know. And then for a little nonfiction quarter, I read The Life and Death of the American Worker, The Immigrants Taking on America's Largest Meatpacking Company by Alice Driver. This one's dark. It's a
Um,
nonfiction about the workers
Tyson,
at Tyson, specifically during the pandemic. And I
did
think,
they mention Joslin, the
I don't,
Joslin plant?
maybe, probably. I'm
Okay.
bad at places. Uh,
Joslin, Illinois is a very large Tyson plant, and I
well,
used to go there for. I was on a collegiate meats judging team, and we would go there often.
and did you see the horrors that were abound in this
I
book?
mean, I did not notice workplace horrors. I'm sure they existed,
Yeah.
but when you're
It's
basically on like a college tour, they kind of separate you off from everyone, and you're not interacting with the people there. So obviously, we wouldn't have noticed like any safety precautions
Yeah,
that were
that's very fair.
being mishandled, etc.
Well,
So
this is specifically during the time of the pandemic that she's looking into it, and
sure, and that was a very unsafe time, and they were
mhm.
just continuing to demand more of these poor people and not offer
is
them any safety precautions.
especially at Tyson. And so I would say this is a very effective novel. Made me never want to eat Tyson again. I will say that Driver is from that community, and so I do think it's an interesting look at the American worker because, like, she doesn't hold back from some things. Like, a lot of these workers are uneducated, so a lot of them buy into
Yeah,
like random theories like, oh, they're out to get me or they're doing this and they're doing
sure.
this. And I'm like, I actually don't think that it's probably that dark. I think it's probably like indifference is the main culprit here
Mm-hmm.
rather than like over surveillance of you when you're not at the plant.
Sure.
Um, but it is really sad to see. And it's a quick read for those who are interested.
I'd be
And
curious what plant that is about. Hannah,
uh,
provide me the details afterwards. I'm curious
yeah,
about the specifics of this.
it's the US plant based in Arkansas.
Okay.
It relies overwhelmingly on immigrants and refugees. And it talks a lot about that.
Actually, all of their plants do, I believe, because right when you walk into their Joslin plant, there is a giant map of the world with all these pins all
Oh,
over it
good.
that represent all of their workers that are at that specific plant.
Well, and I do know that, like, based on some of my knowledge, like EEOC has looked into these types of plants quite
Sure.
often because immigrants and foreign laborers are often used and abused because they
I'm sure.
don't realize that they can make complaints or they don't realize what their rights are. And lots of people try to
I'm
make
sure
sure
there's a
that
lot of
that is the
injury and stuff
case.
as well, um, which is incredibly unfortunate.
Yeah, there is a lot of injury and a lot of blaming and a lot of you have to go use our doctors so that they
Mm,
will sign off that you are okay.
don't like
And
that.
you can't go to other doctors. And people have like had to secretly go to other doctors and pay out of pocket or do these things because they have
Yikes.
to go through certain standards and practices. So it's awful. It's horrifying.
Yeah, I don't like that.
This is a very big, large company that does not treat its employees
Sure.
very well. And a lot of
Go
people
to a farmer's market, everyone.
yeah, go to a farmer's market, buy locally. You can do it
Support your
like
local butcher.
yes, it's
Like I'm not even
I
joking. Like
no, support your local
supports
butcher.
support local butchers, support local businesses, support local
Mhm.
farmers.
And
Yeah,
like we I'm not saying don't not consume meat. Like my husband is vegan. I consume meat. I don't think meat is like you can't consume it, but like the overconsumption of meat and the large industrial complex that is meat production in all of these facility in many of these like larger facilities is just abhorrent, and we could do better if we tried to shop
Again,
local and cut
yeah,
down on our
again,
meat sources if we
support
needed
your
to.
local farmers market, support your local
Yep.
farmers. Actually, if people are interested within the US, there are like tons of opportunities to just literally look on Facebook and
Yeah.
find people in your area who are selling local products, whether that be vegetables, meat, or eggs, or what have you. There are ways that you can access foods.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And we support that. So make sure that you are doing that. And then
but
I'm trying to remember.
on the
Oh,
same
oh,
token, though,
sorry. Go
I
ahead.
do on the same token, I do want to say we're not condemning people who don't have the opportunity to do those things because we understand that a lot of this is a situation in terms of like available opportunities to
Yes.
people, and that if you are unable to access these things, and accessibility is a huge issue, that it's we're not mad at you if you have to get Tyson. Like
Right. That's not
that's
what we're
not what we're
saying.
saying at all.
If you
So
have the availability and the accessibility, please do. And
yeah.
also, like, there are ways to do things like buy more beans. Like, as someone who has learned a lot about vegan stuff, you could do that and
Mhm.
then splurge a little bit more on the
Sure.
butcher, or there are ways to
Sure.
navigate that as well. So be interested in that because there are many things. I recently meal prepped and I made a butternut squash soup, and I was like, this does not have enough protein in it for protein intake. And I just threw a can of beans in there because it is easy
There you go.
protein and it is like $1. So,
Yeah.
and man, grocery prices just keep going up. So,
Yeah.
uh, but yes, so I listened to that, and now I'm trying to think of what I have been watching. I've been cursorily watching ER because that's what my husband watches when I fall asleep. Um,
Banger of an opening.
it is a
Sorry.
banger of an opening. I tried to watch it and then I like fell off because he started watching it aggressively. And like
Mm.
there are so many things where I'll rewatch something. I watched only like certain episodes growing up, but I didn't realize how much of a soap opera that was. Like, so many people are like, "Oh, the TV shows nowadays are trash and da da da," and like they used to be better, and like men don't want to watch this stuff. And I was like, you know who watched a ton of ER? Men. Do you want to know what ER was? A soap opera.
Right.
Like
But these are the
it,
same people that are watching these incredibly dramatic Chicago
right?
Chicago fire shows that have
Like,
a literal bee tornado. Like, come on.
that's kind of my thought process on them when I'm watching it. And uh, something that made me feel better. ER is how George Clooney got started, and he was
Yeah.
33 when that show started. So if you feel bad about
Wow.
yourself, remember that George Clooney wasn't George Clooney until he was 33.
That
And
means I
that
could become George Clooney.
you could
That's
become
cool.
George Clooney. Like life is long. He's George
Wow.
Clooney, and he didn't become that until he was 33. So
Wow.
everyone be the George Clooney of the
I just need
world.
a really
Start
dramatic
later in the life.
medical TV
Um,
show to star in. Screenwriters reach out.
Laura, you could just like move to Chicago and try to get in on the Chicago PD, FD, all of the in-betweens.
Yeah, that's true. The only problem with that is I just worry I would be too successful on those. So I would
Yeah,
want
that's
something maybe a
true.
little lower level,
Oh,
just
okay, a little
starting
lower.
out.
I used to live on a street that often filmed Chicago PD scenes, and so they would randomly be like, "Please turn around. You can't walk on set."
I will say because I don't live that far out of Chicago. It's like 2 hours, but they often have calls for people to be extras in those shows, and they'll just put it on Facebook. They're like, "Hey,
Yeah,
if you're in the area of such and such, just show up at this time. We need some extras." And I think I know some people that have actually been in a couple episodes of, I think it was Chicago Fire, that they just saw one of those calls for extras and they went.
yeah.
So
I mean, why not? It's a fun day. So,
yeah, if you have the
cursorily,
ability to just go there,
I
hilarious.
am gonna check in next week because my sister-in-law and I have plans to watch the Lisa Frank documentary. I don't know
Oh,
if
what is
you've
that
seen
on?
this on TikTok. It's on Amazon Prime, but
Okay.
apparently there's a Lisa Frank documentary and her son's on it, and her son hates his mother and loves his
Why?
father. I don't know because I haven't watched the documentary, but I sent you a TikTok on it because it
Oh.
popped up on my TikTok the other day. I like opened the app and it was him being like, one of these paintings was done by my mother and one of these was done by my father. And the father was just like some hands holding like scales on a football field with a football on it. And it was like, okay, like it's a painting and you know what's being painted. Like it's nothing
Hmm.
terrible, but it's not like the most masterful. And then his mom's was just like, abstract art because it's Lisa Frank. So it was
Right.
like,
It's like
like
cool.
rainbow like lines. And he was like, this one was done by my father, and he did this, 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 and this. And then like an hour later, I was scrolling, and a woman like she was like, my FYP for some reason, it was like, these are two photos. One was written by my father and one was by my mother. See this stick figure one? A baby could do it. It was by my mother. I hate you. And then I was scrolling and I like looked it up to show my sister-in-law. And there was someone who was like, what did Lisa Frank's son do to get kicked off this app? And he like got kicked off the app because he was like aggressively defending his life choice. But like apparently in the documentary, I have not seen this documentary. I'm gonna report back. But there's like a smash cut where he's like, I just like my dad was the one doing all the work. My dad was, doing something he could be proud of. Like my mom, she was selfish. And they were like, why was your dad like doing something proud, but your mom was selfish? And he was like, well, because I don't think she was doing very much. And it's like, what did Lisa Frank do to her son to make him hate her so
That's
much?
odd.
Yeah, right? I can't wait to report back, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, if that's
This is a
on Prime Video,
preview.
I'm gonna have to watch that because I have access to that. I used to really like Lisa Frank stuff when I was a kid. I had tons of it.
I mean, they're gonna do like these are the people behind it. It wasn't all Lisa Frank, and I'm like, yeah, no shit,
Well,
Sherlock. There were
obviously,
so many things on there.
you
So
can't expect one person to do that. Jeez.
little preview to next week, everyone. Laura and I are gonna get into the Lisa Frank universe.
I'm kind of fascinated by that though. Like,
I know,
what?
I know he hates her with the, like, it's oh
Is
god,
he an only child? And
I don't
like now I have all
know.
these questions. Is he an only child? Is this a divorce situation? What's the dynamic between the two
And
parents? Do they
hopefully
get
I'm
along?
hoping like she didn't beat him or anything because like then of course we will like
Oh
respect
yeah.
everything. But based on everything we know
I mean,
at
we
this
just said that
moment,
we liked the
yeah,
stuff as kids. We didn't say we love Lisa Frank.
right. Like I could be
Specifically,
wrong
we
about
don't know
everything.
anything
Next
about
week
her.
we could be like apologies to everyone for our comments on Lisa Frank's son. But it does seem strange to me that
Again,
he
we've
has
said
all
nothing
this
bad about
hatred.
Lisa Frank's son. We're just questioning.
But so what's I sent you a TikTok on it. It's the funniest thing in the world. Please watch it because it's like a woman being like, I'm
Hmm.
just sure that he was defending his comments with the fervor that he was defending his father's artwork. It's like
Wow.
this is so funny. It's just a funny
Love a
little bit.
supportive kid, I
I know,
guess.
I guess, but we'll report back everyone. So,
Wow.
Laura, with that, should we break into the earth?
Yeah, let's break into the earth. So we are starting off on chapter 9. Um, we just finished the interlude. We're in chapter 9, and Sinai and Alabaster, they arrive in Alia a week after the incident after at the node station. And they try to find a hotel, and they're even followed for a little bit by people because obviously people can recognize that their origins and
Yeah.
they're
They're wearing
awful.
uniforms.
So they're like, okay, well, this might end badly. But eventually the people kind of give up following them, thank goodness. And they end up finding a hotel, and it's kind of a little bit of a rigmarole to get the hotel that they're at. And there's even a comment made that they have to pay a ridiculous amount and bribe people for good
Yes,
behavior, basically. And so they also get a new horse for Alabaster because after all of the things that have happened so far, his is like
done.
in bad shape and
Yeah.
injured, and they need a new one. And so this com seems to have a lot of money and at the same time, like not a lot of discipline or leadership. Like they're kind of
Hmm.
unsure like what's going on here because it's like, oh, things look really intricate and fancy, but at the same time, where are all the people? And it seems to be like a farming and fishing community. And Cyan can't remember for sure what the comms in that quartet were called. They end up and they go to the governor's. Cyan and Alabaster go to the governor's mansion, and they're
Hmm.
hoping to meet the governor. And they end up meeting this woman who reveals herself as the deputy governor. And Alabaster is immediately like ticked, and he questions her, and he's like, I was told that we would meet the governor. I know that you're not the governor because they told me that the governor was a man. And he basically is just furious that they would be insulted and thought so little of that the governor won't even spend any time to meet with them.
Right.
And
Well, and
so,
it's kind of hinted at that like the governor almost refused to meet with them and like sent a
yes,
deputy because they don't have to show respect to these
they don't
people in
they
their
don't
mind.
see origins as people, and it's just kind of furthering that thought process that Alabaster has been trying to give Cyan throughout this, where he's like, They don't care about us. We are not important. And she's like, but if we
We're
work really
not
hard, we
really
might
here.
be. And we're not really here. Yeah, but Alabaster's like, no, like nobody cares about us. And he's actually furious in this moment. And he basically insults the deputy. And so they go and they look at the harbor. And this is where they're supposed to be like removing coral from the harbor so that these people in the com can continue to do their work. And they look at it and they're like, it's almost unusable because it's so blocked. And Alabaster knows that they paid the Fulcrum a lot of money because he's like, if you got me, you paid a lot of money to the Fulcrum to have this coral removed. And so they make a plan to stay at the Season's End Inn. And this kind of puts the deputy on edge because she does not have the authority to let them stay
Prove
there
their
and
night stay.
to approve
Like,
their stay there. And she's like, well, this is maybe going to come out of my own personal funds if this isn't okayed. And so then they plan to meet the next day. And so Cyan and Alabaster, they go to the hotel, they get room service, and Cyan kind of notices like how thin Alabaster is when they're kind of relaxing and everything. And she's questioning him when he's eating because he had ordered this soup. And she's like, yeah, like you don't look the greatest. Like, what's going on here? And he's like, you know what? I just can't feel anything anymore. And I can't feel hunger. I can't feel pain. And when I'm in the earth, that's all that I can feel is the earth.
mhm.
And each time I come back from sussing and feeling the earth, I just feel drained. And so then Cyan ends up going to sleep and she has this dream where she's like falling through a shaft of water and she has this like feeling of doom. And when she wakes up, she looks over and she sees that Alabaster is like in a state of paralysis and he's
Mhm.
reacting and trying to suss and he's panicking, which is a bad situation because he's so powerful and everything
Right.
that we've learned in the previous section you don't want origins to lose control. Like having control over their emotions is key to managing their orogeny. So she's trying to calm him down and she realizes that he must have been poisoned. And so he stops her from getting a doctor and he ends up guiding Cyan to help him remove the poison from his body,
Yes.
similar to that dream that she had. And they remove this contaminant and then all of a sudden everything kind of like snaps back into reality and she looks over and Baxter is like vomiting over in the side and she's like questioning like what did you do there, how did that happen, because you're not supposed to be able to control things like that, we're not supposed to be able to connect, you're not supposed to be able to control things we can't see.
Like, yeah, or inside your own body. Like, it's supposed to come from the
Yes,
earth. It's supposed to have this, like, very physical
and
manifestation.
he makes this comment to her which I think is really haunting where he calls them gods in chains,
Hmm.
that they are their power is chained and basically says that they are slaves, you know, that their power is being contained, they're being chained and used. And he tells her that what he does is like a parallel scaling to synchronize their power. And as he goes to sleep, Cyan thinks about like all that he can do and she's just kind of in awe of how powerful he is. And she's also trying to like put together the events of what happened. She's like, they must have purposely targeted him. Like they heard me order my food because I
Hmm.
said this is for me. And she is trying to figure out like why were they targeting him? Like what's going on here? And then she ends up staying up all night because everything that happened was extremely traumatic and she's worried really. And then she like looks out the window and she notices that the amethyst obelisk has gotten closer to them.
Yeah.
So then we switch POVs to our point of view, and we think that we need to be somebody else to get through this because we are so weak. But we know that Nasun is going to need her mother, so we have to stay Asun. We have to stay who we are. We have to be there for her. So
Which
we,
is a weird paragraph to be like, I think I should be someone else, but like I have to stay myself because like it's
yes,
I have to stay Essen. I cannot be anyone else.
because Nasun needs us.
Yes.
But I think that that's also an interesting take on motherhood as well, because I think that people take on all these different roles, especially motherhood, and we can see that there's all these different breakdowns of how mothers kind of like place themselves in, and parents in general place themselves in different situations, and how being a mother is more of a separate role and a separate identity from the other roles that you take on in life.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting way to word it. Uh, but we end up waking to battle sounds at the roadhouse that we were camped at, and we are immediately worried and all the chaos and everything. So we grab Hoa and we start running. We just follow the crowd and we start running. And we're like, we're dehydrated and not in great shape. We don't run the entire time because we're having a hard time here. Like,
Well, also we thought we were gonna get water in the morning. Like we went to bed and we were like,
and
oh
it
yeah,
didn't
we'll just
happen.
fill it up, and then it's you put off for today what should get
Yep.
done, and yeah.
And then we have this moment where Hoa tells us that he didn't sleep and he let us sleep, and because we're like, why didn't you wake us up a little bit earlier? You're supposed to be keeping watch. And he's like, well, I didn't sleep because you really needed it, and so I just decided to let you sleep. And
And we
so
get really resentful and we're like, oh, gonna have to deal with a tired child today.
absolutely, we're like, great, now he's gonna need a nap. So we're kind of like trying to assess the situation, and we're like, oh, you know what, we probably shouldn't go back there because who knows what happened, but we probably need to go back because we need the things that we left there, and we're willing to kind of get into a fight if we have to get water. We need the water, and also that's like kind of the direction we need to go anyways.
Yeah. Well, because we don't want to have to like double way too far back because
Right.
Natsun is like in danger, we think. We're not sure what
And
happened to
continuing to
her.
make progress, so we
Yes.
we can't really lose sight of our mission here.
And so we're
S
kind of like raiders are better than nothing.
right.
Like
So at this point, Hoa and us, we have matching clothes to kind of make us look like we belong together, which helps. And we get back to the roadhouse and we kind of think we're alone, but there's like this feeling that something's not right. And we recognize that there's this woman there filling up
mhm.
canteens, and she's likely comless, which is a really difficult way to live because coms very much take care of each other and provide each other with things and everything. And this woman is comless. She's absolutely filthy with neglected hair, and she just has this terrible odor. And the woman tells us that she's alone and that she doesn't mean any trouble. And we're kind of surprised because we're like, oh, she has nice teeth. And so there's some things that seem a little bit off about this woman. And Hoa also makes the comment like, "Oh, she must have a place nearby because she doesn't have that much stuff. It looks like she's kind of just coming and getting a few things before she heads out."
I also love
And
it because she's just filling up pitcher after pitcher and she's like, what
yes,
of it?
she's just got tons of stuff, and it's just like, okay, this doesn't make sense. And we also are like kind of thrown off because she says that she's running tests and she's keeping track of shakes, and we're like, that's not a normal thing to do. Why are you running tests? And so she we basically find out that she's a geomist, which is
Mhm.
like a scientist, basically. And she's like, "Oh no, I'm not. I'm not a geomist." And we're like, "No, you pretty much are." And she sets our items out for us. And when we ask her about what happens, she tells us, "Oh, you didn't see the body." And so we go to follow her, and this Krakusha is there, and it has gone mad. These are like dog-like animals, and it has
But
gone
they're
mad
cuter
from,
than dogs. I love this
yeah,
description of they're dogs but cuter. So
but
just
they become
imagine the cutest
horrifying when
little
they
thing.
interact with this season and are exposed to the ash in the air at this time, and
Hmm.
they become incredibly violent. And so we see this Krakusha, and it's gone mad, and there's likely others nearby, and we're like, Hoa, do not go by it. And Hoa doesn't listen. He ends up taking on this Krakusha, and it bites him. And when it does so, the Krakusha becomes solid, like
Hmm.
total stone. And his arm is caught in the Krakusha's mouth, and he just like flexes his arm, and it shatters the
Hmm.
Krakusha's head, and it frees his arm. And then he's like, I didn't really want you guys to see this yet. I wanted you to
I
not know
wanted
about
you to
this yet.
like me.
Yeah, and it's a really sweet moment where we're like, we don't really know that much about you. You're terrifying us. And we kind of get the sentiment of like, oh yeah, like I understand why you didn't want us to know some of these things because that was a lot to
It's
take
also
in.
funny because I think in the next section, it's like, I think I've understood that Hoa is not human.
It took a while, but we
It
get
took a
there.
while, but we got there.
So eventually after this, we are like, you know what, we have to keep moving because we need to keep going to find Nasun. And we look behind us, and the Kamos woman is following us. So then we switch chapters, POVs, and we are in Demaya's POV. And Demaya is now at the Fulcrum,
Hmm.
and she's a bit overwhelmed by it all. It's just a lot to do. There's a lot of pressure for her and to succeed. And there's all these other origins there that are called grits. They're her peers, and they're really like heavily disciplined for
Hmm.
their like infractions and like with whipping and things like that for messing up in their dormitories or with their appearance, etc. And it's kind of a weird situation because Demaya feels like this is somewhat of a fair system because she looks around and she's like, oh, there's all sorts of different types of people here, all sorts of different origins. But at the same time, they're all still origins who are
Right.
mistreated in this way. And
Well,
so
she also
Demaya,
loves this structure. Like she really buys
absolutely.
into the like, oh, these are the rules I must follow to be liked. Perfect. This is what I
Yes. And
will
so she
do.
really excels too.
Yeah.
Like she's absolutely willing to strive and feel this pain in order to be well liked by the teachers and to succeed. And because she has this in the back of her head, like, oh, yeah, I can become successful and well liked if I do these things. And so they have to attend these crucibles to learn, and they're able to like walk through the ring garden and stare at the other origins and stuff like that, the other older origins in the area at the fulcrum. And Demaya really just longs for the control that they have.
Hmm.
And she makes the comment that she knows that instructors will ice students who lose control. And this is
Hmm.
considered a mercy to do this, which is horrifying.
Yep.
And so Demaya doesn't really have any friends, but this boy shows an interest in her, and he's kind of a popular boy that's handsome, and he's definitely got more privilege. And Demaya just doesn't trust him. She's like, something's up. And the
Hmm.
next day, Demaya's shoes are stolen, and
Yep.
she's punished for this because her shoes were not. This is like military school esque, where they're very much punished for not meeting certain requirements in their appearance, etc. And so it's not just the shoes, it continues to get worse, and she's continually bullied and punished. And people even like slip alcohol into her drink. And
Yeah.
this is what like tips off one of the older origins, Galena, and uh she decides to deal with it then. And then Demaya's like, you know what? I'm going to form my own ally and we're going to get back at these bullies because she thinks that this popular boy, Mashish, was the one who is kind of like the ringleader of it all. And so she befriends this other girl who is nicknamed Crack.
Hmm. Because
And
she is borderline always about to crack.
yes, because she lacks a lot of control. And so the instructor finds all of them basically in the middle of a quarrel. And Demaya is like, you know what? You need to search the boy's chest because when I go to take a shower, I come back and my shoes are gone. So you need to search their things because they're taking my things and hiding them in their chests. And there's some disagreement between Mashish and Jasper, who's another boy that seems to be involved in the bullying. And they're like, oh no, it was Demaya was doing all this stuff for liquor and all this. And uh, it's revealed that actually the friend that Demaya thought she had made, the ally, Crack, was the one that was in on all of this and is
Hmm.
responsible for the bullying and was in fact trading sex for liquor and other favors and other privileges. And it's a little bit horrifying to learn
Well,
some of these things.
I thought in this section we
And
also find
Crack
out
was
that
trying
like,
to like get out of her own bullying and was jealous of like the things that Demaya was doing and all the success and control that she has.
well, and it sounded like Craig was almost like a little bit more Machiavellian, where she was convincing like Jasper to try to do these like sexual favors for someone else, and then used it
Hmm.
over his head. And then Craig's like,
Yeah,
if I made you look bad, you're so high up on the chain that people would be so focused on
people
making
wouldn't
sure
think
that you
as
were, yeah.
little of
And
me.
Maxish is someone who just kind of like it wasn't he feels like he was just like neutral throughout it all, where he
Sure.
was like, oh yeah, I'll watch it happen, I'll do all this stuff,
But I'm not going to be
because
directly involved. I'm not going to
yeah,
stop it, but I'm not going to be directly involved.
which is why when like because Demaya is the one who has Crack put like the shoes in Maxisha's
Mashisha's, yeah.
yeah, to get him to like call out that Jasper was the original one who did
Sure.
it, and it leads to all this devolving of like
Yes.
it's a very specific thing where Demaya loves the structure of the fulcrum, but you find out that it's
Hmm.
like barely structured, that there's so much going
Right.
on beneath the
Everything's on a very
surface.
thin edge.
Yes.
But it ends up that the instructors find more alcohol and cracks things, and Mashish ends up having his hands broken.
Hmm.
Jasper is exiled, and
To one of the
Crack,
fulcrums, so we know what happened to him based on this.
right,
Yeah.
probably at a node station,
Hmm.
and Crack is never heard from again. So
Hmm.
likely iced based on what
Yes.
we heard previously that that's a mercy. And so after this, the other grits, they never bother Demaya again. And I thought this was just like a really haunting chapter. All of the
Yeah.
situations involving Demaya are so haunting and really hard to
Because she's
read,
like
honestly.
12. Like she's 12 dealing with all of this
Her
stuff.
her
And
entire
that's,
life is just full of abuse
yeah, it's horrible.
by her
So,
peers because now she's in this situation where she's with her peers and it's supposed to be a found family like Shafa said it was going to be, and they treat her horribly.
yeah.
So
Well,
mortifying.
it's also interesting. Like, I feel like we've hit a bunch of different sections, especially with the like the deputy governor in the previous section and in this section where you have characters who treat someone badly. And then when they in turn get treated badly, they almost want you to feel sorry for them. But you're getting these characters who are like, I don't feel sorry for you because you were
Right.
awful to me. So what do you want from me? If you had been kind, maybe. But all you did was treat me
Right.
poorly. So I'm not going to
Have you
pretend
noticed the
like that
treatment that
didn't
I've been
happen.
undergoing? Like,
Yeah,
okay,
like, and that I feel like Alabaster is the one who like calls that out in the
sure.
section with the lieutenant governor, where he's like, "No, you treated me badly. I'm going to treat you badly. You
Exactly.
deserve this." Like, and that is the same with I feel like Demaya slowly coming to that in her sections where she's sometimes like, "I don't feel bad because I have to survive, and you guys are ruining my
Hmm.
life."
Yeah, absolutely. So in chapter 12, then we get uh, to the point where Cyan arrives the next morning at the shore without Baster, which is it's a disappointment to the deputy governor because she was like, "We hired a 10 ringer. Like, why isn't he here?" And Cyan's like, "Oh, don't
That's
worry. He's so powerful that he can, you know, he can reach out all the way from where he's
that's
at. And, like, he
so
doesn't need to be
I
here to observe."
read that as the deputy was like, he's not here. We don't have to pay you our full price. I
Oh,
thought she was the
absolutely.
one who poisoned him. And she was like, well, now I don't have to
Well,
pay it. And it was like subterfuge in order to get them out of some of their contract, was what it felt like.
we don't know for sure about the poisoning because
Yeah.
we'll get a little further into this that it becomes a little more complicated that we're not
Yeah.
for sure about the poisoning. But the governor still isn't there. And Cyan makes it a thing, which
Yeah.
infuriates the deputy governor because Cyan is rightly mad that they're not being treated like the professionals that they are. And
Right.
Asael, who is the deputy governor, is like, well, we're uncomfortable. Don't you understand what it's like to be us? We don't know how to react around ragas. And Cyan's like furious and is like,
Because
look,
she used a
our
derogatory
contract,
term.
yeah.
Like,
And she basically kind of bluffs that she's like, our contract dictates that we or doesn't dictate the amount of time. So we can spend as much time as we want doing this. And so then the deputy comes back with another woman who is the lieutenant governor, so a higher rank person, and she apologizes and they basically compromise. And Cyan's basically like, I kind of like this lieutenant governor. Like, she actually has read the contract and
hmm.
she's able to kind of banter a little bit better with Cyan and seems to just know a little bit more and handle tense situations a little bit better.
And is able to bluff a lot more of like, I
Oh,
might dislike
absolutely.
you, but I'm going to treat you like a person. And that's the bare minimum here. So,
So then they go out to the harbor, and Cyan is trying to assess the situation, and there's like something weird about it. She can't feel the obstruction that's there, but there's like some kind of hole or something, and there's like this coral on top of it. And so the coral has blocked the harbor for like about 400 years because Alia is only like 2 seasons old. And Cyan's like, you know what we should do? We should have a study done, bring in some GMS, because we don't want to like unnecessarily cause any kind of harm or anything. Like, I think this could be an issue here. And they're like, look, we don't have the money to bring in these people. We're already spending a bunch of money to have you guys come do this. So we need this done. We're willing to take the risks. If there's going to be a shake or something like that, we're willing to do it. Um, so Cyan's like, I don't know. I think you should just leave the area and try to make a new home. Like, just give up on this place. Like, go somewhere else. And they're like, we don't have the wealth or the infrastructure to do that. And so then Cyan recesses into the earth and is looking for the obstruction, and she feels this power and she can't hold it. And suddenly a shake starts, and the people, they all abandon Cyan on the
Yep.
boardwalk. And this obelisk rises out of the water, and it's garnet. And Cyan's like noticing, she's like, there's something wrong with this. There's a crack in it. And something is wrong inside the obelisk too. And there's this person contained within the obelisk who is screaming, and it's a dead stone eater.
Mhm.
So then we switch back to our point of view,
Spooky.
and we learned that the commonest woman who is following us is named Tonki. And also, I just love Tonki. Tonki's amazing.
I
Um,
love her. She stinks even after she bathes. She's
I
just
mean,
a
how
smart
long has she
woman.
been without bathing?
I
You know,
know.
where it's like it would take a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but she's following us because she's like, "Hell is interesting. Like, I want to follow you guys. That's really interesting." And so we're getting like these weird vibes from her because she's mentioning like university, and we
Even
think that
though she's definitely not a scientist.
yeah. And so we're like, that's weird that you've like had all this privilege, and like that's kind of sad that you've come all this way down in status to where you're at now. And so she ends up leading us to her home, which is like this little group of caves, and it's full of all of these things that she's scavenged. And we notice while we're there that Tonki is trans, and uh we're also at the same time like super like glad, like thank goodness you are taking a bath. Like you smell so bad.
You
Please
smell
clean up.
so bad.
And so the three of us end up going off again, and Hoa won't talk about what happened with the Kikushua. And so we all end up wearing masks on our travels to like protect ourselves from the air quality because it seems to be getting worse. And we're just like, just better safe than sorry. Let's wear these masks to protect ourselves. And we end up coming across a group of people who are look like they're making a new tribe, and we ask them what they know about what's happening in the north, and they don't really know much. And we've already come across others who have similar stories, but none of them are from the north. And we noticed that it's interesting because there's nobody from Humanus or north. And
Right.
so we take off again, and we're noticing like Hoa doesn't eat much, but he watches everything and he rarely sleeps. And then Tonki proves to be like pretty useful actually because there's these moments where we have to interact with people or trade for things, and she has like compasses that she can trade. And we also get the vibe that like yeah, she definitely knows more than she's letting on. Like we think she knows that we're an origin.
Hmm.
And Hoa tells us like, oh yeah, I think Nasun went this way. And so we're very much relying on Hoa to kind of lead us in the direction that we're going to go. And suddenly he becomes like less certain, saying, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of you in this place. So I'm not really sure how many origins are there. But I think that that is absolutely where Jija and Nasun went in that direction. So like we're a little frustrated at this point because we're like, "Oh, okay, well, we were relying on you, and now things are taking a bit of a turn."
Right.
So, switch POV in chapter 14, and after the events of this obelisk coming out of the water, Cyan gets a telegram from Humanist saying, "Stay at that location." And Alabaster like jokes, he's like, "Well, you've either earned a ring or you're gonna be killed."
Yep.
And Cyan is like, "Well, why can't we come back to Humanist? Like, what's going on here? Like, we did what we were supposed to do, right? Like they shouldn't punish us." And
I,
it's
I
kind
just
of
did what it was.
devastating because
Yeah.
Cyan is still in these moments like after all that they're going through and all that she's learning, she's still in these moments of like trying to understand why people aren't treating them the way they should be treated.
Hmm.
And Alabaster's like, I don't know. They probably just want us here when GMS arrived, and they kind of talk about the politics of being left and why they don't really make sense, and why they need to understand, and why they don't understand what happened there. And Alabaster warned Cyan not to reveal her connection to the obelisks. He's like,
Yeah.
do not tell anyone about this.
Because she talks about how it feels differently, like how she seems
Yes.
to have these connections.
He's like, shut your mouth. Do not say a damn thing about that.
She's
Like,
like, but don't you feel that? And he's like, shut your damn mouth.
never say that again. And so he's still weak, and he's like, let's go for a walk. And they go out on the boardwalk, and they're kind of walking around, and he's like, comment Alabaster comments, he's like, yeah, that obelisk doesn't look right. And Cyan realizes that only they can like cess the obelisk. They're the only ones that can kind of see that it's there and feel it. And it's
And it's
kind
like
of hanging.
pulsing.
Yeah, it's pulsing and it's hanging like close to the ground and wobbling, and it just seems really off. And Alabaster tells Cyan that they're keeping them there because the obelisk is failing.
Yeah.
And he says, the reason we had to come out here is we are being listened to. It's a way to control us, and they're likely using like the stone and everything. They're connecting to the earth. They're using the node maintainers to listen to us.
Hmm.
And so Cyan like has this realization that Alabaster is able to connect to the obelisks and control them, which is something the Fulcrum does not know about.
Hmm.
And so Cyan realizes that the Guardians are basically the ones who hold the power. But she's like, because she's having all these moments where she's trying to figure out, like, okay, but if we're so powerful, we answer to Guardians, but who do the Guardians answer to? Like, what's this hierarchy that we're existing in? And as they're walking and kind of like talking a little bit, they're leaning on the board, like one of the rails of the boardwalk, and they notice this like really attractive man watching them, and they realize that it's a Guardian. And
I was just thinking about you guys.
yeah, and Alabaster's like, hey, don't let him touch your skin. Like, whatever you do, don't let him touch your skin. And he introduces himself as Edkey, and he's pretty rude about the job that Cyan did. And he's like, look, Alabaster, we found your guardian. She sends her regards. And Alabaster's like, what? You found her? Are you serious? And they end up getting into a big interaction with the guardian, and Alabaster
Yep.
is stabbed with this like really clear uh, dagger of sorts, and it leaves him in immense pain.
Yep.
And he basically he jumped thinking that the guardian would attack Cyan. And the guardian's like, why would you think I would attack her? Seriously? Like, you're a 10 ringer. Like, be real. I'm not going to attack her. You're more powerful. And he ends up blocking their ability to use orogeny. And Cyan ends up having this panic attack while she's being blocked. And Edke just keeps attacking him. And she doesn't understand, like, the events that occur then because everything starts to happen in slow motion. And Alabaster really lacks control, and Cyan is angry, like super angry with the Guardians in the system, and they're both really just kind of losing their ability to control their emotions. And so she reaches for the obelisk, and it really is painful for her because it's
Hmm.
broken. And then all of a sudden, this Stone Eater is before her, and she like asks him, she's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "I'm fine." And then the obelisk just like shatters
Yep.
everywhere. It's like this really big cinematic moment that I would love to see played out on screen, but this is also one of those books where I'm like, I'd never want to see it played out on screen. Like, I would love to see some of these moments, but also no.
Right.
So, going back to our POV, we go to the place with all these origins that Hole led us to, and it's not much of a calm. Like, we're kind of looking at this, we're like, oh my gosh, you guys are exposed. You don't have like any kind of buildings. You're all unorganized. There's no
You're never gonna
uniformity at
last.
all. Like, what's
Like,
happening here? You people are a hot mess. And Tonki is a little on edge too because she's walking with like these knives in her hands. And Hoa's like, no, this is the right place. We've definitely been looking for this place. And we're like, we've been looking for Nasun for 2 months and now
the
we're in
name
this
of this
place.
chapter is You're Among Friends, and it's like, but am I?
It's like, I'm really questioning that. Where are the friends? And so all of a sudden, these three women come out and they're pointing weapons at us. One is an Antarctic woman, one's an Origin, and the other one is this woman that's really like off-putting. We're unsure like what the deal is with her. And the Origin woman tells us that her name is Yika, and she identifies herself as a Raga, and she uses Raga as her use name, which is
Yeah.
surprising to them. And so the third woman then we realize is a Stone Eater, and we ask them like, "Hey, did a man and a little girl come through here?" The little girl was maybe around like 10, and they're like, "We haven't seen anyone like that. Like we would have
Right.
noticed." And so we're just like so overwhelmed with all of this that we start to cry, and we're thinking we're like, you know what? None of this would have happened if it
Yep.
were weren't for us. Like we're the cause of all of this. We are the ones that deserve to die. We're the ones that brought these babies into the world. We're the reason that they're going through this suffering and everything. We're the ones that deserve to die. And then Yika does this weird kind of orogeny to us that we don't really understand. And then they offer for us to stay in this area, which is called Castrima. And
Yep.
we agree that uh, we'll stay there for a little bit because, and we're like, this season is not going to be short. It's going to be centuries long. This is going to be a long one. And we know that there aren't enough stores for this area for them to survive this season. We're like, you don't have enough food and everything. There's like not much that's going to be able to keep you guys afloat here. And Yika's like, Well, there's 22 origins here, and there's more stone eaters too. There's like more of your people, Hoa, and Hoa's like, not liking that.
Don't
Like,
don't bring that on me. You
I
that's my business.
I'm not okay with that. I like to be an individual. So,
I am Hoa. Hear me turn things to stone. That's
yeah,
my
I
business.
am the only. And so, they're like, well, we've taken in some people that might be useful. And so we're like, you know what? We need to just go down there and see like what's going on with these people and see if maybe one of them actually is our daughter, just in
Hmm.
case like she brought on a different name or something like that.
And
So
they do
then,
say they kind of hint like, well, like it would be weird for like a dad to come through, but like maybe someone else came
but she's
through,
like,
and
oh,
we're like,
Jija, like I guess he kind of has like a useful, like his use is kind of helpful at times, maybe not all the
right.
time, like a napper, I don't know. But then we switch over to chapter 16 and we're back with Cyan, and Cyan wakes up like cold and beaten up. She's like super sore and she's like, oh my gosh, we're on an island. She's like, this is worst case scenario. She looks over and Alabaster's like curled up over on a section and she's like, okay, we're not too far from Alia. And Cyan's just like really scared because islands are dangerous. Like they're not a place where you should go because they're like really susceptible to like tsunamis and volcanoes and cracks in the earth and everything. They're just not safe. Like comms absolutely avoid them.
Mhm.
And they realize that a stone eater took them there. And well, I guess Cyan realizes that a stone eater took them there, and she's not totally surprised because Alabaster reveals that he knows this stone eater and has known the stone eater for quite a while.
But
And
also at first he thought he was just hallucinating her, so it's fine.
yes,
It's
which is
fine.
also sad because he talks about like how he has these hallucinations and there's like this moment where he's like, "Oh yeah, like do I love you or whatever? Maybe it was a lover or somebody that actually cared about me." Nope, it's a stone eater. Like, "Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. Everything about you is so heartbreaking." And so he tells Cyan, he's like, "I call her antimony because Alabaster was already taken," which is
I
a funny moment. And
do love that.
yeah, and he's like, "We've known each other for 5 years," and obviously antimony is not her name, but uh then Cyan like sees antimony go into the earth and she's like, well, that's how we got here. We traveled through the earth. Okay.
And we don't like that idea. We're like, I am
Terrifying.
vehemently against traveling through the earth. How
Yeah, like
dare
that
you?
sounds bad. Okay. And we're like, well, that stone eater from the obelisk must not be dead either. And so we're trying to like put together the events of what happened and try to figure out like what's going on here. And Alabaster really doesn't have a ton of answers to these things, which is a little alarming because usually he does know what's going on.
Hmm.
And so we are trying to like put together things and we're like, okay, so probably what happened with that guardian, there are guardians likely developing factions.
Hmm.
And that guardian that came after us, he was probably sent to kill the two of us. And so then we're questioning like, were they trying to poison us? Were they trying to poison both of us? Were they trying to poison both him? Was this how the poisoning went? So there's never really any like total conclusion as to what happens with the poisoning because you had mentioned that there might be some like political reasons, financial reasons for trying to poison them. But now there's the idea brought in that possibly these factions of guardians were brought in to take them out in this way too. And then they had to go to more extreme measures when the poisoning didn't work. So the two of them are like questioning guardians and their hierarchy and leaderships and how they pretty much all can negate orogeny.
Yep.
And Alabaster tells this really heartbreaking story of how he used to have a 10 ring friend, which was obviously a lover. And
Yes.
they basically were walking one day, and this guardian attacked his lover and turned the orogeny inward onto this
Mm.
man and
Yeah.
ended up killing him. And it's a devastating story. And so the more we learn about Alabaster, the more crushed we are and understand like how he became the way that he
Yes.
is. And so the two of them, Cyan and Alabaster, they end up going further into this island and they're like, this is actually like a really strange and beautiful place. Like a lot of creative things have been built. And we realize that it's basically a group of like fishing and pirate people. They're called the Miav. Miav is the land, and the Miavites are the people there, and they basically fish and they don't do a lot of trading, but they rely on raids of the mainland to get a lot of things. And this island sits on like a really hot spot. Like uh, something that they would be really concerned about if they were in the mainland. But they're like, you know what? We don't care about this at all because we're free. We're free of Sansa. Like this is paradise. We don't have to deal with these people. And they're like, Sansa doesn't care about this. And we find out that the island has survived for seasons and seasons and seasons, and it's remained really stable. And it's because they put Origins in charge.
Yes. Well, but also we're like freaked out because islands shouldn't be there for seasons and seasons
Right?
because
Because
like
they're so unstable because of the
there's
tsunamis and
yes.
underwater activity and everything.
Especially this one because it's so small. So we're like, no, we
Yes.
have no defenses. What are you talking about? We need to get off here immediately. But no, the pirates are fine. They put Orogenes in charge.
Yes. Yeah, the Origins, they are the ones in charge. And I think this is really refreshing to Alabaster too. And Sion's like, what the heck is happening here? Like my whole life is being turned upside down in just a matter of minutes because everything that I have known has told me that Origins being in charge is a terrible idea. And Alabaster's like, it's about time. Like
Right.
somebody's finally got the right idea. So then we switch back over to Demaya's POV, and Demaya now has no friends. It's a totally different dynamic with all of her peers, and she basically just ends up wandering around the Fulcrum a lot and kind of exploring. And
Well,
she's
it's
noticing.
incredibly
Go
sad
ahead.
because she's like, yeah, at least I have the independence to walk around here, and there are only few like places that are off limits. So like, I'm happy, and it's like, wow, your
Yeah,
happiness is just having the freedom of movement, which is depressing.
yeah. It's really sad, and she explores the Fulcrum all the time and thinks about Humanus and the Fulcrum and how they're really just like these self-sufficient business-like places, and how there also is this place just for guardians.
Yes.
And Demaya really just avoids the Guardians because she's like, I notice something strange about them. Like, there's this really weird sensation whenever I'm near them. And the other Origins avoid them too.
Hmm.
And so then one day she discovers, like, as she's walking around the Fulcrum, she discovers this dark, empty hallway. And there's all these meeting rooms and books and all these objects and, like, elegant clothes and things that have likely been outlawed and, like, removed from people that they're not supposed to have. And she continues to explore in this area. And one day when she's going off exploring, she notices that there's this girl following her named Beanoff, and she's like, "Have you seen anything weird around here?" And
Well, she slips in with the group of people, and no one
yeah, she
like
slips in
questions
slips in with
her.
the grits,
And
and
then she's like, it's so weird. No one like pays attention at all. And Tobias kind of like, yeah, no one pays attention because like
yeah,
they don't really
they don't
care about
care.
grits. Like, yeah, they don't care
We're not
about
important.
us.
And so she's like, "Have you seen anything weird?" And uh, she's like a circle shape or like a hexagon shape or something. And so then Demaya's like, "Oh, absolutely. Know what you're thinking about. Like, follow me." And so she learns that Beanoff is the child of a powerful humanist family, and she basically used her privilege to be able to break away and sneak into the Fulcrum. And she's like, "Look, I've done it before," and uh, she's like, "It's no big deal. Like, I'll just get in a little bit of trouble and I can just throw my name out there and they're not going to make a big deal over it." And she's also just kind of thrilled to meet an Origin and talk to an Origin because apparently she's just kind of been observing up until this point.
Right.
And so Demaya is like, okay, she's a little bit leery, but she's like, okay, well, I'm just worried about, like, I don't want to lose the opportunity to take my ring test because that's what my life is about now. Like, I
Hmm.
need to be able to take these ring tests. And so Demaya ends up helping Beanoff find the room, which is like an office. And they notice that there's something going on in there. And there's the comment made that there's always something going on beneath the surface. And so they find this other tunnel, and Beanoff reveals that she's looking for this artifact that she thinks is at the heart of the fulcrum. And it's something that has protected humanists for seasons. And that's why the city was made on top of this thing. And
Hmm.
everyone's very much afraid of this thing, but nobody really talks about it. And she's trying to figure out what this is. And so they end up discovering this really big, like, cavernous hole tunnel type thing. And there's all these small, like, sharp needle like objects on the walls of it.
So
And right before
creepy.
they can, like, touch it, a guardian appears and she's like, Shafa's going to be so disappointed in you, Demaya. And I'm like, oh, come on. Why? Don't bring Shafa back. And Beanoff ends up taking the fall. And she's like, oh, well, my parents are probably looking for me, which Demaya's like, okay, well, that's a smart move to mention
Yeah.
that there's people looking for you because she had mentioned, she's like, I didn't really think being off was that smart because she just kind of jabbers all the time and seems a little flighty. So then the Guardian is like, well, Shafa's gone, but we called for him, and I just kind of need to know if you touched any of the extrusions from the socket, which is that hole or cavern.
Yeah.
And she's like, did they call for you? And did you answer it? And she's holding her hand, and she's like, the Guardian, this is, says that it's angry and it's readying for the time of return. And she keeps squeezing Demaya's hand, and she mentions how it wanted communion and compromise. Well, then Shafa ends up interrupting all of this, and he stops the Guardian by jabbing into her skull and removing
Hmm.
something at like her brain stem and killing her. And then he's just like, can we get the body out of here, please? And some people come in and remove the body like it's no big deal. MBD, we just have
Would you
this
think
man
if
just
Guardians were
stormed in and killed someone.
if you think the Guardians were in control, this one would have like more of a say, but it's just like,
Oh
nope,
my
nobody
gosh.
matters as long
Nobody
as you're
matters.
powerful. Like,
You need to
yeah.
just, we need to all fall in line. That's what it's
Hmm.
about, is falling in line. So then Shafa reveals that the Guardian, he's like, did you know that the Guardians have to undergo a procedure, an implantation to make us what we are? And Demaya's just like, I don't know, there's a lot happening right now. And she ends up crying, and Shafa comforts her. And again, it's this horrifying moment where Demaya is like, Shafa's the only one that's loved me ever.
Ugh, what a
And
circle of abuse. Like,
he's just comforting her in this moment. And she's like, he's got bloody hands and everything still. And he's like petting her, and it's just terrifying. And so Demaya then like gets this really off feeling, but she's like, you know what, I'm just gonna move forward. And he's like, well, I need you to do this thing for me. There's this really important thing that you need to do. I need you to go into the next room, and you're gonna take a test to get your first ring, and I need you to pass it. Can you do that for me? I'm like, how manipulative. This is
mhm.
awful.
Well,
And
and she's kind
she's
of
like,
like, he's doing this for me so that I don't die because
mm-hmm.
I've just done this horrible thing. And if I don't pass, I'm gonna die. So I have to pass it for him or else I'll bring shame to him. And it's just like, ugh.
It's like I could throw up at how gross
Yep.
all of this is. And then she's like, yeah, I'll do it for you, Shafa. And I also realize what I want my name to be after I become successful, basically cyanite. So we know that
Ah,
cyanite and Demaya are the same
we're looking into the past.
person.
We're messing with timelines per
Meshing
Hannah's
with
little
timelines.
thought last episode. So,
So then we switch back over to our POV, and we're exploring with Yika, and we're like, was this area created by an origin? Because it really seems like it had to have been. And they're like, oh, I don't think so, because it's been around for like centuries. And it was found via mining. Like people discovered this mining in a nearby
right.
area, and then they're like, wow, look at all this cavernous, like this big area that's got these little like homes built into this geode and everything. And so we're taking it all in, and so is Tonki. And Yuka's like,
Because it's like a camouflage comm almost where it doesn't
it's
seem
all
that big.
underground.
It's all underground, so we didn't think it
So
was
nobody knows
impressive.
about it. And Yuka reveals, she's like, I actually quelled the shakes in this area during the recent shakes. And she's like, I'm really actually able to pull other origins to me. I don't know how I do it. But I'm able to do it. And we keep moving, and we find that this whole underground area is just like this big calm. There's tons of people down here. Like there's children playing. There's all these houses built into this geode, and it's just a whole city. And Yuka's like, yeah, this place was pretty much mostly here, and there's been a lot of like discussion of whether or not we should stay here, whether it's safe, and the
Because
people
like
have,
the airflow is limited and like there's certain
and like stores
limitations
of
to living
power
here.
and
Yeah.
the stability of it all goes into play, and they start like explaining some of the mechanisms to Yika and to us also. And we're like, oh my gosh. So
Hmm.
all of these mechanisms are run on orogeny.
Yeah.
And Yika then is kind of like, yeah, pretty much. And so then we're like, are we allowed to leave? And Tonki's like, what do you mean we're not leaving? We have to check out more of this place. I'm a scientist and I must do more experiments,
We're
basically.
like, but like also, can we
But
leave?
also,
Are we
did you
allowed
forget about
to?
our whole
Like,
mission? Like,
and our
need to
freedom?
I really need
Like,
to find our daughter. Like
yeah.
that's the whole point of all this. And Tonki's just kind of like, oh, yeah, about that. And then we realized we're like, wait a minute, did you can never answered our question about whether or
Yeah.
not we could leave. That seems
And she's like,
problematic.
you know so much.
Like,
Like,
okay. So then we switch back over to Cyan, And Cyan and Alabaster are still on this island, and Cyan realizes that the people of Alia basically must think that the two of them are dead, which is why they're not trying harder to find them. She's like, well, I guess this is the chance that we need to be free,
Well,
and
because there's
we can be
also like
free on this island.
a blight over in Alia. Like it's like a she
Oh,
says
it's completely destroyed.
it's like a pimple popped or something like red,
Yeah,
just like awfulness. So like there's no way we would have survived or they would have survived had they stayed there.
absolutely. And so Alabaster's like, look, my guardian can't find me, and Shafa is going to have to touch you again to
Mhm.
reestablish the connection with you. And Cyan's like, okay, so my safety is literally tied into slavery. And it's this really uncomfortable truth that Cyan just can't seem to fully come to terms with. And
Mhm.
Alabaster's like, I'm not going to let you forget about this, that literally the only thing that keeps you safe is them being able to control you. That's what keeps you safe. When they can't control you, you're no longer safe. When they fear you, you're no longer safe. And so they end up, they're at this island for a while, and Cyan ends up falling for this man named Inan, who is basically the true leader of the Miav people. He's a feral origin, someone who has not been trained in orogeny at the Fulcrum. And he's just this really charming, like really big man who has this bolstering voice and tells stories. And he's a pirate and goes off on these adventures and everything.
And
And
he's
the
like
other
flirting
problem,
with her, even
oh,
though she doesn't
absolutely.
want him to flirt with her.
And the other thing
Like,
is, Alabaster falls for him too.
I know he's
And
also flirting with Baster.
they
Like,
have this situation where Cyan Alabaster's like, "Do you want him?" And Cyan's like, well, "Do you?" And Alabaster's like, "Well, yeah, but like, am I supposed to be gracious and just like let you have him even though I don't want to?" And Cyan's like, "No, whatever, you can have him." And
well, because Baster
Alabaster
has this
has
like
this
such
moment
a
where
sad moment.
he's like, "It's been so long since I had a lover that I actually wanted." And I'm like, oh, crushing. So
Yeah.
then Cyan graciously offers to like go and get Inan and bring him back to sleep with Alabaster. She's like, you know what? I'll play matchmaker here. I'll do this. And she goes and talks to Inan, and Inan's like, well, we all know they're flirting a little bit and everything. And Inan's like,
Hmm.
well, we know that you're the stronger of the pair. And she's like, really? No, he's the way stronger
What?
one. And she's like, he's happy too. And he's like, no, he's just being held together by a thread. We
Right.
know that he is not the strong one. That's you. And she's like, well, I was kind of hoping you'd go sleep with him. And he's like, are you friends? And she's like, no, no, we're not friends. And he's like, you seem like a really good friend to him. And
Yeah.
so he ends up and he goes and uh, goes to their room to sleep with Alabaster Innan does. And Cyan's just kind of walking around. And this woman on the island, she comes over to Cyan and she's like, are you going to have a baby with that man so that we don't have to steal another one from the mainland? Which is
Not
terrifying
what you
because
want to hear.
apparently they
Like,
are also relying on orogeny so much to maintain their own island that they are stealing young grits from the mainland.
yep.
So she's reckoning with that moment. And so when she goes home, Alabaster is crying and he's being comforted by Innan. And Innan's like, come on, get in bed with us. And so Cyan's like, okay, well, this is weird, but I guess I will. And they all end up
I've
going to
already
sleep.
slept with one of them already, so I
Yeah,
might as well sleep with the one I want eventually and maybe be
right.
in a throuple. I don't know. Like,
A little confused, but
yeah.
it was, I guess, okay. So then she goes to sleep and they all like sleep together and everything. And it's just a really comforting moment for all of them. And then the next morning, Cyan wakes up and she has morning sickness. So she is, in
Hmm.
fact, going to have a baby. And the
Yep.
people of Miav will not have to steal
Steal a
one from the
baby.
mainland. And so
So, yeah.
then we end with the interlude, which basically warns us again. It's another warning. Like, pay attention to what's happening because it's important to know that the pain we have shapes us and it
Yep.
makes us who we are, and that we need to be paying attention to the way that peace and war affect people, and that there's chances to cool and solidify before things resume. And so there are a lot of factions of people wanting peace, and there's other people that want war for a lot of reasons. And we need to think about the reasons that they get where they are, and
Yeah.
also recognize that there are not just guardians, or they're not just stills and origins in our world. There are guardians and stone eaters too. And to never forget Father Earth because he has not forgotten you.
No, he has
So
not.
while we rest, those forces that gathered round are beginning their advance, and that is where we end this section.
I can't wait to find out what happens next. Laura has not spoiled anything, but she says something crazy happens in the next section. So,
I was
uh,
I was worried because I was afraid that there's like a moment in the next section where I literally gasped when the first time I read it because I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I thought that was in this section, but luckily it's in the last section. We have our penultimate. This is our penultimate episode, and our uh next
well,
episode we will have the
our
shocking
penultimate plot episode.
penultimate plot
We
episode.
have two more episodes of this book because we do a
Yes.
deep dive for you.
We'll
So,
do characters and themes for our last episode, but this is our penultimate plot episode. So the next one we are getting our shocking moments happening,
I
and I'm
I
excited.
honestly have no foreshadowing other than maybe the all three women are the same person, or they could not be. I could see
Hmm.
N.K. Jemisin being like, "No, I'm gonna throw you all for a loop. No, thank you." So I can't wait to find out what happens next. Laura only lets me
Yes.
read section by section, so I literally have no
I think that's only
idea.
important for this book, honestly. But
Oh,
I
okay.
might I might make you do it for the third one. I don't. Maybe I'll make you do it for all three
I'll
because I
just
think
keep
it.
doing it for all three
Okay.
because it's a good bit. But
Because
if nothing, Hannah loves a good bit. So
okay,
we're
good.
gonna go into that. And we hope you're enjoying this. We've gotten some great feedback over on our Discord, so please join us there,
Okay.
saying
Good.
they
Good.
love when we really nerd out about a book, and we are nerding out about this book hard. So there's been
This
some
is
great
a favorite
analysis.
series of mine. So
So please head over to our Discord, join us in conversation over there. We talk about
yes.
everything we're watching and enjoying. If you want to talk about Blue Hour over there, we will do it. But you can also follow us for updates
What is
on
Blue Hour again? Is that
that
bad?
was the Paula Hawkins
This is
book,
me
that
trying to
terrible
make a
book.
joke.
Yeah, but oh, I have failed. I failed. But you can also follow us on Blue Sky or Instagram,
Yes.
or check us out at ourpod.com where we do author highlights and
Hmm.
we have, a bunch of other things. So check us out on all of those places. You can also email us
Absolutely.
at ourpod@gmail.com. Right now, we paused our Patreon just for the month because we had a little bit of struggle filling up December and we didn't want to take any money from people if we're not making
There's
content
just a
for
lot
you.
going on, and
There's so
we
much going
we
on.
we're struggling to balance it all.
But stay tuned because we have some great things coming to the Patreon soon. And when we unpause, we will let you know and we'll let you know
Yes.
what to do to head over there. So please check out everything that we're doing and all the content we are
And
creating
be
for
sure
you.
to rate and review and share with your
Yes,
friends. We really
please do.
appreciate that, and it does really
It
help.
does help. And with this new season, we always get new people joining in on the conversation. So please reach out to people who loved this book and
Yeah.
have them join the conversation.
And
And
thanks for
join
listening
us
today.
And join us next week as we finish the first book of the Broken Earth
Breaking the
trilogy
earth.
as we break into the Earth with the fifth season. Bye!